tell you when we're live. Hey, Darcel.
Hello, hello.
Hey, welcome. Welcome to the coaching call.
Thank
So,
you.
Darcel, it's a question you may have heard me ask before, but I always think it's a nice place to start in a coaching conversation. Today is, at time of doing this session, the 30th of October, 2023. If we were to be able to fast forward 12 months, and whether it's by coincidence or design, you and I are having a conversation. And in that conversation, you tell me, I just kind of say, hey, how are things going in your coaching and personal life and stuff like that? And in your words, you say something like, you know, oh my God, things are amazing. Things are better than I could have possibly imagined. Things have manifested themselves, things I didn't even imagine could have manifested themselves. Every area of my life isn't perfect, but I feel like it's all aligned. It's all where I would want my heart, my spirit to have been ultimately moving me towards. And then when I ask you, what, I go, wow, like that's incredible. What's your secret? And you say, well, obviously, I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of things I've had to do, and new things have had to come out of me, and new things have had to come into me. But there was this conversation we had back on the 30th of October just last year, and there was some things we spoke about in that conversation that really helped shift things for me. So my question to you now in this moment, Darcel, is if this conversation were to be that impactful, profound, important to you a year into the future, what would have been what would have been the headline thing that we'd have needed to have spoken about for that to be true?
Interesting you should ask that because that has kind of been something that's been revealing itself to me. I think what we would have spoken about would be where I am keeping myself stuck by creating stories about my circumstances. So that's what we would have talked about, and we would have established or kind of uncovered the places where I'm doing that. And we would have talked about how I can stop doing that and, ways of accomplishing things that maybe I hadn't considered before so that I can start, picking up some forward momentum. That's what would make that a really powerful conversation for me because I'm starting to realize certain patterns in myself and my thinking and the things I say that are not helpful. But I know they're not helpful, but I don't necessarily know what the helpful option is, if that makes sense.
It does. Just so if you see me looking down, I'm just making notes so that I've got things to refer back to. Where are you out of integrity at the moment, Darcel? Like meaning where are you making verbal commitments to things that you're not really committed to?
My my health is one of those places where I tell myself I'm committed to it, but I know what really being committed to it looks like. So I'm going to say my health, my actual physical health. Um, my so then looking at my business I would say that as well. And, taking the bold steps, the steps that I would encourage a client that I'm talking to about this very thing, taking the consistent, bold steps to give that momentum, definitely out of integrity there. Yeah, I think those are the two main places right now.
These two areas in particular, health and business. A coaching mentor once asked me this question. At first, I wasn't sure what he meant, and then he re-explained, so I will if needed. But regarding health and business, what don't you want people to know about you? When it comes to those two areas, what don't you want, not people at home that you're close to, that you're open with, but most people, what don't you want them to know about you in those areas?
When it comes to my health, what I would like people to not know is how much knowledge I actually do have about what having optimum health looks like in terms of how I eat and how I move, and how inconsistent in this current space I am right now, inconsistent I am with that, even having that knowledge. That's one thing. When it comes to my business, I suppose I don't want people to know how incapable I feel sometimes. And that actually felt really vulnerable, even saying that out loud. But yeah, I think that's what I wouldn't want people to know.
Earlier, you talked about stories. What are the if you were to know, what are the stories that you're telling yourself about health and business at the moment?
With the health side of things, so there's a couple things. There is I struggle to find time to consistently make movement happen for me every day. And we've talked about this on a previous. So again, I have, strategies I can use, but that's something that comes up for me. I struggle to have time and I struggle to find the energy for whatever reason. And usually it's something surrounding my boys. So it's almost like, or not almost like, I'm just going to say that's what it is. I feel like I'm using my children as an excuse to not be consistent, because either somebody wakes up in the time when I'm supposed to be doing my exercise, or something happens and then I'm so tired in the morning that I don't have the energy. So it's a time and energy, but I know it comes down to me making a decision to do it, because today I most certainly did not have the energy because I don't feel very well today, but then I made the decision to do it because I know how it's going to impact my feeling. But I don't make that decision every day. It's the story of the time, the circumstance surrounding the boys, and the energy. That's that story there, or those stories.
If you were to give your health a scorecard, not today, because that doesn't necessarily it's too detailed a picture. But if you get to give your health a scorecard for the past 90 days, 0 being worst it's ever been, 10 being best it's ever been, what score for the past 90 days? What would be the average score?
I'm going to give myself a 5.
Okay.
Yeah. It seems really harsh, but it's because I know where I've been before that. Prior to that, I know where I've been, and I know where I am now, and the inconsistencies, whether it's with my eating and my movement. So I'm going to give myself a 5 for the last 90 days.
Got it. And what's been your highest score, like, that you've had for yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being the best, well, 10 being the fittest you've ever been. Yeah, where have you, what's been the highest you've had? And then tell me about that time.
I would say the highest I had was probably about an 8.5 edging to 9, and that was, strangely enough, during that lockdown period. But I've always been a physically active person. And then, through my training, well, no, through the fair and all of that surrounding that period of our lives, I came around to a health podcast that I listen to, and it's fueled by all of this current research and nutritional science, and all of that. And that kind of fueled me on that path again, because it was just like, oh, I suddenly felt really empowered to take control of my health. So in that period, I think it was probably in one of those maybe second lockdown parts or whatever, my husband and I, we really started like just fine tuning our nutrition based on all of this, new stuff that we were discovering. And yeah, the movement, we were just moving every day because, we had time on our hands. So we were working out every day or going for walks or working out in the park. So I think that was a period where the combined thing, because I don't think you can have just a physical element without the nutrition element. So I think the best point in my life where I had both of them in a good place was then. And that was probably in 2020, going into 2021, somewhere around there.
Okay. So on one hand, I think it'd be very easy to just say, what do you need to do to repeat that? But the fact is you've highlighted time and life has changed with children, etc. So I guess my question is, what would the 8.5 out of 10 Darcel be doing? What would you need to do to be the version that's 8.5 out of 10 now, given that there are different life circumstances with the boys? What would the 2023 version of 8.5 out of 10 look like?
So the 2023 version of that is going to look like refining my idea of what working out looks like. So, it may not necessarily be doing a strength training workout for an hour. Maybe it's going to be, I lift weights for 20 minutes, do a really concise kind of circuit. Maybe it's 30 minutes of yoga. So it's just refining what working out looks like to fit into the current space that I'm in, and being flexible with it because I have children. So not letting the fact that, okay, one of the kids woke up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, not let that be the thing that's like, okay, movement's out the window for the day. How can I be flexible? How can I find, this is again something we spoke about, how can I find maybe 3 10-minute slots where I can, okay, maybe do 3 sets of upper body in 10 minutes and maybe do some core in another 10 minutes. So it's refining my idea of what workout looks like and being flexible with it and not discarding it because, my perfect schedule has been ruined. And then with the eating, there is an element of discipline that has to be present with the things that I know don't serve my body the best. Yeah, and I'm still kind of clawing my way back to that, because when I was pregnant with my second baby, and you know what that's like with the morning sickness and the hormones, so then eating kind of got all skewy, and then I started eating things that I wouldn't normally, but I just needed to fuel myself. But I feel like I let myself go too far the other way, so I'm trying to claw my way back. So there has to be an element of discipline. Back to the things I decided, again, the decision and sticking to the decision. I know gluten's not great for me, so I know what that looks like with limiting that. I know dairy is not good for me. I know what that looked like when I eliminated it completely. So there needs to be an element of discipline and just going back to the things that I know serve me the best, and remembering how I felt when I did it as well is really key. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about business. On a scale of 0 to 10, where would you rate yourself for the past 90 days in terms of let's talk about your business inputs, because you can't control the output, your input, the actual work that you're putting it's confusing, isn't it? Out, but the work that you're physically doing to actively work on your entrepreneurial endeavors, where would you rate yourself on that scale, 0 to 10?
I'm gonna give that a 2. I'm gonna
Okay.
give that a 2. Yeah.
And why have you given yourself a 2 in that?
Because I've gotten to a point, I got to a point where I felt so stuck for various reasons, that I just kind of stopped. Whereas before, when my second baby was a lot smaller and, his naps were really like clockwork and consistent, I was working around that. So I was booking in the trailers, was doing trailers and doing things around him. And then as he got older and that became a little bit more unpredictable, I felt like I couldn't do that because even if he did nap, because he became so unpredictable, I felt like I couldn't be fully present on a call because I'm constantly worried that he's going to wake up. So it just didn't feel like I was doing whoever I was speaking to the best service. And instead of really trying to think about how I could find another way, I just stopped because I said to myself, this is just not possible. That's why I give myself a 2.
Mm. And what's the best it's ever been? Like, what score would you give yourself for the best it's ever been?
Mm, I'm going to be honest and say 6. 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was different then? I think you've alluded to it a little bit by when you talked about early stage of having baby number 2. But what was going on then? What was different?
There was a different kind of determination. There was that feeling of, there was that initial feeling of discomfort from inviting people to trailers that kind of started fading the more I did it and the more I did the trailer. So I was riding on that, like, oh, this is good. I just need to keep going because, it's one of those things you can't get better at it until you keep doing it. So I was riding on that. And then the little voices started because none of those trailers were really transforming into actual clients. So then, the little doubtful voices started that obviously I'm doing something wrong or there's something that I'm not very good at. I've now come to understand part of what the reason for that is. But there was a period where I had this momentum and I had trailers booked in and, I kept reaching out to people. There was also a point where I think I said this to you, I feel like I'd exhausted the people that I could reach out to. And we talked about expanding my network but yeah, there was a period where there was momentum and I felt like I was actually working and I felt purposeful. Yeah, and I feel like I've just lost that now.
Mm. I'm curious. I wrote a question down because I was going to go a different way, and then the question came in, and I thought this may be even more impactful. We're talking about health, and we're talking about business, and we're talking about scores and all this kind of stuff. It's all nice and it's all kind of clinical and tactical, but I guess the question I really want to ask is, like, what's really behind all this? Like, what's in your opinion, what's really going on, like, beneath the surface?
I'm scared. Like I am terrified. I feel like I have taken on this, I've decided to do this massive thing, which is bigger than anything that, or it appears that way to me. I have no idea why I'm getting emotional, but I guess maybe because, you hit something. Um, I've taken on this thing that seems like the biggest thing I've ever taken on. It the success of it is completely dependent on me and my actions. And sometimes I feel so scared that I'm not going to be able to fulfill that. and then I'm gonna fail my family. Yeah, essentially, is what's behind it. Because at the end of the day, they're my why. They're the reason I want to do this thing for various reasons. It's because it's gonna, allow me to take care of them and provide for them in the way that I want to, also with me being present and being there in the way that I want to. And I'm so scared that sometimes I feel like, if I don't make this work, I have completely failed them. Yeah. So that kind of stops me in my tracks sometimes.
Mm. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. As a parent, I get that. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that for me, the only real failure is not maximizing your true potential. But there's no guarantees that you're going to achieve the external result that you want, because we don't have full control over that. But what you do have control over is your ability to maximize your own potential. And I think sometimes we get caught up in a ideal future, like thinking life's gonna, like when we arrive at this point, we'll feel something that ultimately is a feeling that we can feel in any given moment. Like we have to decide to feel that feeling. It's not a I think what I'm trying to say is we'll never actually be happy with external events, because you've achieved some great stuff. So getting there will never give us what we think it will give us, because it's all about this moment. It's all about what's going on inside of us. And I truly believe that as spiritual as that may sound, obviously there has to be, if we're going to live in the Western world where there's bills to pay, we have to move and grow and take action. But I ultimately think it all comes down to a feeling, a knowing inside that you have or haven't maximized your true potential.
Yeah.
Because if you maximize your true potential and give it your all, then you can't really fail your family, because there's no guarantees that we'll achieve what we want. But as long as we go for our dreams, and as long as we do the work and like that, your boys can say, mummy really gave her all, like her whole life, like she really, then they'll be able to see that you did your best. And that is all that we can do. Plus, the danger with having your intrinsic value attached to them validating you by accomplishments and achievements is dangerous, because then you're sending a message to them that if they don't achieve, then they're not enough. So you realize that it's really tricky, because I see what you're saying, like I've got to achieve, otherwise I'll fail them. So what that does in their head is, if you don't achieve, or if you don't achieve enough to feel worthy of your own love or theirs, then you pass that on to them.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean don't try and achieve. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if your self-worth and that you think there's a point in time where you're going to arrive and you're going to have achieved, and they're going to validate you, and people around you are going to validate you, and you're going to validate yourself, trust me, that moment will never arrive, because you'll achieve something and then you'll want to achieve something else.
Yeah.
And if you're never validating, like, and I'm going to move into something else in a minute, if you're never validating your character growth, your identity upgrade points, then your self-worth and internal external validation compass is always tied to like externals, and
Yeah,
then they're just going to role model that.
yeah. It's a fine line, isn't it? That's what I'm feeling. It's such a fine line. Um, yeah, because sometimes I'll equate, you know, my financial position to whether or not I'm a good mother.
Yeah.
And I say it out loud, and even saying it out loud, it makes no sense. But I find I do that sometimes, you know. But I
One of
have
my,
been
one of
doing
my
I have
I'm
been
just gonna jump in a sec.
yeah, go ahead.
One of my mentors always used to say, Miles, never, ever, ever, ever compare yourself to money. In fact, I
Mm,
think I've got a chapter on that in the book. Like, never, ever, ever compare yourself to money. You're way worth more than that.
mm,
Like your ability to, because people aren't going to remember you based on how much money you've made. They're going to remember you based on how you treated them. Like, did you treat people well? This is just to clarify for anybody else that's watching as well. This is not like some trying to downplay building wealth. That's not what this is about. But it's about recognizing that wealth, like if we live in the West, in a developed country, we're already, I don't know what the percentage is, I can never remember, but like we're already infinitely wealthier than the vast majority of the planet. It's really easy to just sit and intellectualize that, but it's not commonplace to sit and actually process that and think about that,
mm,
and think about just the existence of being here and being able to just like buy food and have a roof over our heads and be in a safe world where not that far away right now there's a lot of unsafety,
yeah.
like you know. And I think reminded of something else that a mentor once said, which is he said, you know, Miles, remember when you have children, your children don't, they care less about presence with a T and more
Yeah.
presence with a C, with an E.
And I get reminders of that. I feel like I'm going through a period now because I've been doing some work, and I focus on, I do my daily gratitude practice, and then the more I do that, things happen in my life, in and around my life, that give me more things to be grateful for. You know, like on a Saturday morning, we wake up and the four of us are here, and the house is just, it's full of joy. It's joy, and just for no reason other than they're just happy. And if we weren't good parents and like fueling them with love and joy, they wouldn't be that way. So that's the reminder to me, like you're okay, like you're a good mother. Like look at like my son, like I open the door when I come back in from work, and the joy from both of them, like the little one, he will crawl so fast just to get to me. My 5-year old, like he will give me lip and all of that, but the minute I walk into the house, he's like, mommy's home. And that wouldn't, if I was not a good mother, that would not be there. So I get reminders of that. When it comes to things like my health, and, I have friends, like very dear friends, who are going through some really horrendous like health struggles, like, not even able to like walk around and do things for themselves. And every time I'm able to get up, that's another thing that I'm grateful for. So I get reminders because I think I'm in that space of doing the work, and it started to open my awareness to these things that were probably happening around me all the time. But I feel like I have a different awareness now where it's like, yeah, that's for you. You woke up in a safe home, a warm home. You can step out your door, be unharmed. So
I'm
yeah,
listening to you about Darcel, and I feel like there's a but. And the reason I say I feel like there's a but is because you've just beautifully intellectualized everything's great about your life. So what's the but then? What's the problem?
yeah, the but is it seems like it's so easy sometimes for me to slip out of that, because then I go into those spaces where I'm like, okay, that's great, but you still haven't done anything with your business. You're still
let's talk about those moments. Let's talk about that then. You just said something. Sometimes it's really easy to slip out of those moments. What happens before you slip out of the what you just described, all the good stuff? What's generally going on? Like, where are you? What are you doing that sees you? If you can find that moment, you can see what you need to do to interrupt that pattern.
Hmm. Um, there are moments where, and I'm being very mindful not to use this word because I feel like it's a word I need to kind of shed from my vocabulary. But I'll say it now just for the sake of when there's a lot going on and I start to feel overwhelmed, even though it could possibly be something unrelated to business or whatever, but then I start to spiral. So with this whole, unexpected circumstance of having to move and all of that, and then there was a lot surrounding that. So I started feeling overwhelmed, and then it just takes me to this place where everything seems negative. Like even when we found the place that we're currently moving into, um, which is beautiful and lovely, I found everything wrong with it. I focused on everything that was wrong with it to the point where when Raf said that we were going to make an offer, I was like, you sure? And now it's like, it's perfect. It's beautiful. So I think that feeling of overwhelm is definitely a trigger that spirals me down a very negative path.
So it sounds like there's a thinking that happens.
Yeah. I can't cope with this. It's too much. I can't deal with this. I can't do this. And then it's like, I can't do anything. And it just like extends into every area.
And are you generally at home when these things, this thinking comes up?
Yes, which I also think is part of the thing that I'm starting to be mindful of that, but that I also realized eventually was a bit of a thing for me because this is a very different life than I had been used to.
Mm.
Know? And it was different when I had my first son and I knew I was home. I was on maternity leave for a year and then I was going back to work. Like every day I was getting dressed and going into a space with people and interacting and having that socialization and doing something I loved. Whereas now I'm at home every day. And I don't mean that with any kind of ingratitude because I have a home and I have a safe space to be. But I realized that that was affecting me because I'm at home. And yes, I'm at home with my baby, but it's just different. I didn't have that. There was no one, there seemed to be no separation between home and work. So that was a weird thing for me as well. And then just that socialization and interaction that I was used to suddenly was not there. So that really, and I didn't realize it was affecting. It took me a while to come to that conclusion. So that's a bit of it as well. And then when all the other things start laying on, and I feel this word, this overwhelm, it feels like the walls start closing in. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, what you're talking there about environment, I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially during when we had the pandemic. So regarding environment, what needs to change? Like, what needs to change regarding environment? Because it sounds like you've come to the conclusion that spending so much time at home isn't as good as it maybe was when you were going out to work and the social. So what needs to change in that area?
Well, you see, that's why sometimes you just have to stop yourself in these moments of stress and really assess what's happening. Because I was so stressed out by this move that was, seemingly forced upon us that I saw it, I was seeing it all as this negative thing. Even this space that we found for Raf, it was just perfect. And I was just like, no, these are the cons, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. in this place that we're moving into, though it's a 2-bedroom, there is a just random, like, third small box room, which will be my workspace. So immediately I have a separation, which is really helpful because when I'm in there, I can go in there, I can close the door, I'm in my workspace. I can come out of there, close that door, and I'll be in my home space. And then the other part of that, which I realized, is I have a thing I did a couple weeks ago, and I've decided I want to do it monthly because it was just so nice. I wanted to sit down with a group of mums and just have a conversation. And I'm really happy I had a conversation with you before I had that sit down, because then I think it allowed it to just be this beautiful organic thing that was so lovely. And it was just an hour, and everybody was so grateful because, the thing was, we don't create these spaces for ourselves. So that's something I want to do on a monthly basis. So that's something that is going to help with that socialization, because I'm in a really wonderful community of and these are mums that are mums of kids in like Aiden's school and stuff. So that's something that I'm going to that I've committed to doing monthly. And then again, just redefining that idea of what socialization looks like for me now. So, there are communities. Actually, another coach from your community told me about this website called Meetup. And so I tried it. And the first one I went to, it was just wonderful. Just this like wonderful sharing, people in common spaces with common ideas. So that's something. Every now and then different groups will pop up to see if I'm interested. And yeah, that's really lovely because there's so many different, and that's great because not all of them are virtual. There was one that was a hiking one. I was like, oh, maybe I can go do a 1-day hike. So again, just redefining what that looks like. So just being open to new ideas, I think, and creating opportunities for myself to socialize instead of, feeling like I just don't have, there's none, I can't do anything. Create something. Yeah. 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 And that felt really good to talk about because these things make me happy. Because even in that coffee with mom morning I did, and it was just a conversation, but it at the end, like, the gratitude and stuff, it felt like there was an element of service as well, because sometimes we're all craving that. I just want to sit down with a group of like and we just talked about all the weird, like quirky things about motherhood and things we go through with our kids. And it was nice to be able to facilitate a space like that. And also it was really helpful to me because, sometimes in, this parenting journey, you're going through stuff and you can feel like you're the only person in the world that's going through this. And usually you're not. So it was just nice to have that as well. So yeah, so in all of this period where it seemed like a really dark and stressful period, it is a period full of like blessings and newness and yeah, good things, good possibilities, and yeah, just different.
Good. Feels like a natural time to take you off the coaching hot seat, Darcel. Feel like
Yeah.
you can overcook a coaching session sometimes, and feel like we've come to a nice natural conclusion.
Yeah, it feels that way too, and I feel like I'm on a little bit of an emotional high now, which is nice. And yeah, it was good for me to say out loud those stories that I say to myself. Um, the reasons why not or why I can't, and there's always a way.
Mhm.
That's the thing I've been coming to recently. There's always a way. It's just to choose a different way.
Mhm. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Last couple of things last thing I wanted to share with you before we get off the phone, looping back to the original things we were speaking about, health and business. Um, but one of the there's two key things I've learned that, you know, if you want to know the shortcut to growing, thriving in any area, I feel that there's effectively two things I've learned that you need to do. One, you've got to be in the right environment. So it's like if you spend time with five, let's talk about health. If you spend time with five people who aren't healthy, you will be the sixth. You know, if you spend time with five people that are just not physically well and able, not absolutely fit as they possibly can be, you'll be the sixth. On the other side, if you spend time with five people who are super fit, train hard, eat well, look after themselves, super high standard for health, you will be the sixth. But in brackets, you must add in, if you're not spending time with anybody, there is no benchmark.
Right.
So it's just so you can hear that, you or somebody else listening go, well, I'm not spending time with anybody. Well, that's almost as bad as spending time with, because then there's no blueprint. So I guess advice would be like rhetorical question. It's like, who could you spend more time with? Because it sounded like you and Raf had this, you know, the thing going on during COVID. In addition to him, for example, it's like asking yourself, who could I spend time with? You know, you talked about the meetups and stuff. It's like, where are there environments where there are likely to be people, and maybe even add in to remove the egoic excuse, not yours, but the on one that often our brain tries to do, who are mums with two young children, who are
Right.
fitter than you, healthier than it's like, who are they? Where are they? And what would you need to do to go and spend time with them? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is the same in business. Spend time with five people who are really successful coaches, you'll be the sixth. Spend time with five that aren't successful, that aren't doing the work, you become the sixth, right? So that the environment thing is really key. Like who you spend time with is who you become. Like if you didn't learn a single more thing, didn't listen to a single other podcast about business or health, but you went and hung out with five really fit people and five really successful coaches, and you just spent time with them consistently every week, you were texting, like you were consistently spending structured time with them. If you weren't at their level, you eventually would be, because otherwise you'd be rejected by the group unconsciously or consciously, because they want to make sure that they're growing and rising. You know, it's so important. Like I'm in an environment, a peer group that I've been, you could say, invited into by people that are like multi millionaires. And they want to do business with me. They want to partner up on stuff. I've got to raise my game. And the minute they've invited me into this circle, I've noticed like I was just texting Satty this morning, like saying like I'm gonna, excuse my French, I'm gonna fucking level up this next 6 months, like you've never seen, because I have to if I want to stay in there. If they perceive me as worthy of their league, then I need to raise my standards. So that's something. And the second piece around that is around identity. So for me, the one that is the easier one to implement, because it doesn't require you finding the environment, is to redefine your identity in those areas. So for example, when I plan my week, I am, based on some of the training I've had, in every area of my life, I have like, you could call them like job titles. You might have heard me talk about this before. So I have titles for every area. And it's in those titles that my identity is created. So for example, in the area of health, my title is athlete fit. So if you saw my goals on my kitchen board, all you see is one of the goals is athlete fit, because I know what that means. I know how I need to eat. I know how I need to sleep. I know how I need to train. The minute I see athlete fit, it gets me going. Seeing that made me do HIIT first thing this morning. Seeing that made me go to the gym this morning. Seeing that will make me go for a jog after I finish this video with you. Seeing that will make me get on the spin bike tonight. Some people are like, how do you have the the headspace to do all that. Athlete fit.
Right.
When I see that, I just go into a zone where I'm like, I have to do those things because I've created an identity that
Yeah.
says I am athlete fit. Because I'm not an athlete, but I'm like, I want to live like one. I want to be a business
Mm,
athlete. So that's the first thing. So it's about you coming up with a title for health as an identity for you. And you've got to make it something fun and playful so that you can associate to it. But you immediately see those words or hear those words, and it's like you like snap.
mm,
And then have it for business as well. Because the minute you create titles, straight away you're neurologically associated to thinking about the standard that you need to live into to be that. Like a few years ago, I thought I was doing well in marriage, but wasn't. And it was that I was doing okay, but I wasn't doing as great as I wanted to. So I created this identity, this title, which is like rom-com love.
mm.
And it's on my board in my kitchen, rom-com love. So it makes me consciously think about how I need to show up, how I need to behave with Sati, how I need to speak to her. I don't get it right all the time.
Of
But
course,
every
yeah.
time I think rom-com love, it immediately makes me think, oh, I better check how I'm communicating. I better check how I'm cuddling her, touching her, speaking to her. Am I being as respectful as I could? Am I being as loving am I being as romantic as I could? It immediately makes me check myself in that. So I now have titles for every single area, like as a dad, like joyful daddies, the joy is the dad one. Um, and I have it for every single area so that every single area has its appropriate identity title so that it's not like one area is more important than another.
Right.
My recommendation in leaving this session is come up, especially for health and business, come up with titles that represent you at your best in those areas. So then you won't need to think so much about goals. It'll be more about an identity to live into. So, like for business, you said some things about like fear and worrying that you won't be enough. So you want to come up with something that's really around like just something that's around you always like I don't know like something like business role model. It's just off the top of my head. It's got to be
Mm,
your words, but like if I think business role model, I think that's like business role model. What would that mean? Well, that means I'm a role model. What would I have to do to be a role model in business? So I'd have to be taking action consistently, and I'd have to be living the message,
mm,
walking the talk, and not just talking about it. If I was a business role model, then I'd have to really like that's straight away that's a made up one. That's not my one, but it immediately springs to mind. It's not about what do I need to do today. It's like
yeah.
business role model. Oh, okay, business role model. Or like if I went in this moment with you, I don't know, like super coach. Straight away, I'm like, I'm coaching Darcel on YouTube right now. Oh, super coach. How would a super coach show up?
Mhm.
Straight away, I'm like, oh, my posture. I've changed my physiology. Super coach. So those labels, because you talked earlier about stories, all a story is a label of how you think you should or should be.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, utilize that and create new labels, create new stories
Yeah.
so that you can move into the next phase of you with a new identity.
I feel like this is so I don't know what the word is I want, but the timing of this is serendipitous the right word? I don't know if that's the right word, but I feel like there's a lot of newness about to happen. Just, going into a new home and a new space. Yeah, so I'm ready to, for the want of a better term, like be a new me, because I feel like I've been given this, these are the things that I'm asking for, like happening. You're gonna have this new space, this new environment. You're gonna create this new group and meet these new groups of people. So yeah, I think the new labels, the new identity. is what I need to carry into that space with me instead of taking the old one and then trying to shed it in the new space. And yeah, I just need to go in with the new. Yeah.
And do you feel that if you were more consistent at redefining your identity in these areas, that your life would improve?
I 100% know that. It sometimes is a frustrating thing about me. I know that. I know that. But here I am sitting in my, excuse soup, stewing away. 100%. Yeah.
I think excuse soup, you should put in IP on that. I think there could be some good blog titles and video content out of I can see you presenting a seminar, maybe one of your upcoming things you're doing with your partner in crime over in Bali. I could see you having a drawing like a circle that looks like soup, and people are allowed to stand in it and talk about their excuse. I don't know. I'm a very visual.
Oh, I might have to steal that.
Yeah, but yours. You created it. I didn't say it. Yeah. And then they have to step out of the excuse soup and come up with a new identity. That could be your thing.
Look at that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Darcel.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Very welcome. Have a great rest of the day.
You too.
See you soon. Take care.